In November 1944, during the bitter edge of winter on the French coast, an entire American patrol squad, 12 soldiers from the 29th Infantry Division, vanished without a single trace. No bodies, no dog tags, no distress messages, only a helmet, discovered buried in wet sand, punctured with 3 bullet holes and a dent like something struck it repeatedly against concrete. The U.S. military ruled it a combat loss, presumed dead by artillery, case closed, but their families whispered a different story. Their letters never returned. Their personal effects never recovered. Their graves forever empty. And for 50 years, those families mourned men without bodies, soldiers without endings, heroes without answers. Until in 1994, a beach development project detonated a buried concrete structure near Omaha Beach, unexpectedly revealing the sealed entrance of an underground German bunker never listed on any map. The bunker was labeled EL-62, and inside its rotting walls, investigators found something that would shake not just families, but conscience, patriotism, and history itself. Not just because it revealed what happened to the 12 vanished Americans, but because it revealed who they became. It was 2:47 a.m. when the phone rang in a quiet Baltimore kitchen. Jimmy Sullivan hadn't slept much since his grandfather's funeral 4 days earlier. Sergeant Frank Sullivan had died at 91 years old, clutching the same faded black and white photograph of his squad. 12 boys smiling like they believed war could be conquered by courage alone. Jimmy stared at the photo on the fridge door now. He knew every face without ever meeting them. The answering machine picked up first. A stiff voice came through. "Mr. Sullivan, this is Colonel David Mitchell from the United States Army Archives Division. This concerns your grandfather. Call me immediately." Jimmy snatched the phone before the message ended. "This is Jimmy Sullivan." Silence. Then, "Mr. Sullivan, we found something. About your grandfather's squad." Jimmy's chest tightened. "They were killed in 44. Artillery strike. Everyone knows." "No, Mr. Sullivan. They weren't killed. Not then." The voice lowered. "They were held. And we believe the bunker where they were kept has just been uncovered. I need you in Washington. Tomorrow morning. Pentagon South entrance. 8 a.m. Bring anything your grandfather left behind. Letters, journals, personal effects." Click. The line went dead. Frank's belongings sat on the table. A locked cigar box, scratched and heavy with age. Jimmy stared at it, remembering how Frank used to run a finger across it but never let anyone open it. The lock gave easily to a screwdriver. Inside, Purple Heart, a marksman badge, 2 faded photographs, and a small journal, no larger than a playing card deck, wrapped in oily cloth. The leather was stained black, maybe water, maybe blood. The first page was dated November 15th, 1944. The day after the squad disappeared. Most of the entries were faint pencil scratches, nearly erased by time. Jimmy squinted under the kitchen light. Day 3. They are still screaming. Tommy's fingernails. The door sings. "We won't break." Scratched deeper, nearly tearing the paper. Buried it all. God forgive us for surviving. Jimmy pressed his hand to the page. Frank Sullivan, the man who never missed his high school baseball games, had lived with a secret that required God's forgiveness. It wasn't combat guilt. It was something worse. Pushpin stories like this are almost erased forever. If you believe history should be remembered honestly, not sanitized, hit the subscribe button so YouTube doesn't bury these stories too. Now we continue. Washington in the pale morning felt too calm for what Jimmy carried with him. Mitchell's office was buried underground. No windows, 3 checkpoints, thick soundproof doors. Only one box sat on the desk, stamped classified. Eyes only. Mitchell was younger than expected. Fit, serious, but his eyes looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. "What do you know about Bunker EL-62? He asked. "Nothing," Jimmy replied. "Neither did we," Mitchell whispered. "It wasn't on German records. Or ours." He opened a folder and slid a photo forward. A concrete wall covered in thousands of scratch marks. Names carved with fingernails. Dates etched until fingers bled. Beneath one name, Sullivan, someone had carved, "We are still Americans." Mitchell handed Jimmy another photo. 12 dog tags hung on a wall like trophies. Not German trophies, film trophies. Next came the worst photo, a steel door. On the inside were claw marks that went deep into metal. "Day 8, Mitchell said flatly. "That's when the psychological experiment began." Jimmy braced himself. Experiment? Mitchell's reply was simple. The Nazis didn't want information. They wanted to see how long Americans could resist breaking, and at what cost. Then Mitchell set a film canister on the table. "What you're about to see is not torture. It's survival. And survival isn't heroic. It's transformative." He loaded the projector. The footage flickered to life. 12 Americans stood against a wall, chained, starving, exhausted, but alive. Then a man entered with cold precision. Thin face, wire-rimmed glasses, immaculate uniform. Dr. Ernst Richter, a psychiatrist turned SS officer. Fluent in English, ice in human form, he called forward the youngest private Tommy Brennan, barely 20. Richter calmly described Brennan's sister's polio, her pain, her paralysis. Then he injected the boy with a paralytic mimicking her disease. Tommy collapsed, screaming silently, body fighting to understand why it couldn't move. And that's when Frank Sullivan, off-camera, began to sing. Soft at first, "Take me out to the ball game," then louder. One voice became 2, then 12. American soldiers sang a baseball song to drown out a child's torture. Richter screamed at them to stop. They sang louder. The screen went black. Mitchell spoke quietly. Their bond became stronger than fear, deeper than pain. Something Richter didn't predict. He wasn't breaking them. They were breaking him. Jimmy's breath shook when the final film played. Richter's eyes were bloodshot, his uniform stained, his hands trembling as if haunted. He demanded they choose who should die to save the rest. Instead, each one volunteered to die. All 12 argued over who deserved to die for the others. Richter shouted. His worldview disintegrated. Frank Sullivan stepped forward. "We did break." The room froze. Even Richter stopped. "We all broke. One by one." Tommy wept. Billy described begging. Frank admitted betraying information once. Breaking doesn't matter if someone else holds you up afterward. The experiment was undone. Torture collapsed. Richter collapsed. Then Richter offered them something. Information to rescue 17 Americans in other bunkers. He begged to die. They refused. But they would not save him either. Richter slit his own wrists as 12 starving boys watched. Frank held his hands, not to stop the bleeding, but to witness it. Richter died looking at the men he failed to break, believing he'd redeemed one sin. He hadn't seen what came next. The 12 returned to take his money, his identification, his weapon, even his wedding ring. Bobby Novak slid it on his own finger. For his wife to know he died wearing it. Frank shook his head. "No, we might need to trade it for food." The film ended with the men walking into darkness carrying supplies from their dead torturer. Mitchell turned off the projector. "Your grandfather wasn't tortured," he whispered. "He was forged, and what he became is why they all lived." Dietrich, the now elderly guard who helped them, met the investigative team at the reopened bunker. He revealed the truth the films didn't show. The squad killed 23 Germans during the escape. Not soldiers, farmers, a field nurse, 2 Hitler Youth boys just 15. Anyone who saw them and might report. Frank Sullivan kept count. 23 scratched marks on his rifle. But this wasn't just killing. It was strategy. Frank assigned each killing to different squad members so no one man carried all the guilt. He turned murder into shared burden. A bond worse than torture. Families gathered at the bunker. Children, widows, grandchildren of the 12 men who returned home but never came back, not really. Dorothy Brennan, the widow of Tommy Brennan, stood tall despite age and cane. She demanded the bunker be sealed forever. Let them be remembered as they lived, not as they survived. But Jimmy argued, if we forget them, we forget the 23 they killed, and the 17 they saved. Then a voice interrupted them. You saved my life. 3 elderly men entered. Survivors from the bunkers recovered because of the information Frank's squad traded in blood and secrecy. They had spent 50 years searching for the men who bought their lives. The room froze. Stories like this don't make war movies. They make history real. If you believe survivors deserve their truth told, subscribe so these stories are never buried again. The debate silenced when a new voice spoke. My husband was a monster, but your fathers were not. Everyone turned. Clara Richter, widow of the Nazi psychiatrist. She produced an envelope mailed in 1946. Inside was money, enough for a child's future. A note written by Frank Sullivan. This is taken from 23 who died. Let this buy life instead. Tell your child their father died quickly. That is our mercy. Clara sobbed. He killed my husband, but he also fed me. That is not heroism. That is humanity under fire. The vote was unanimous. Seal the bunker. Burn the torture films. Preserve the truth, but not the horror. Remember them not as monsters, but men who carried the cost of survival. That night, as the bunker was sealed with cement, Jimmy read Frank's final journal entry aloud. We thought surviving meant staying alive. We were wrong. Survival is living with what staying alive required. We held the line, not in war, after war. As dawn broke, families stood over the cemented grave of EL-62. 12 men entered hell. 12 men escaped. 12 men lived lives no one understood. Not heroes, not villains, just men who learned that brotherhood is the only thing strong enough to survive survival. Jimmy returned home and found cassette recordings hidden in his grandfather's garage. For 43 years, once a year, the 12 surviving soldiers called each other. Not to talk about war, but to live as fathers, husbands, workers, hiding the weight they shared. Each call ended the same way. We held the line. Check in next year. Jimmy listened to the last tape, recorded the year his grandfather died. Only one voice spoke. Frank Sullivan. This is the last roll call. The last man standing carries them all. So remember us not for what we did, but for what we refused to become. The tape clicked off. The story was over, but the truth remained.